Let's talk about onboarding. And today's workshop is a culmination of, I would say, 15 years of me really focusing on how do we retain our clients? How do we onboard in a world-class way? And iterative over the years, thinking like, oh man, I think I've got this all figured out. And then realizing, yeah, I don't. Like there's missing pieces, there's missing components, finding gaps along the way. And even recently, in the last 90 days, really just going very deep on our onboarding process in our agency, plumbing and HVAC SEO, finding where there was redundancy, finding where there's just friction for the client, and really streamlining it. So you are going to be getting the latest, greatest, cutting edge of kind of how we've refined our process. And in seven-figure agency, we rotate on these topics: landing clients, delivering results, retention, and scale. And so probably at least once per quarter, either me or one of the members comes in and shares, like, here's how we're thinking about retention. Here's how we're thinking about onboarding. And so I was able to take the cumulative intelligence from some really great agencies and pull the best of what they've done, and you're going to be getting that. So just type go if you're ready to go on this. You're excited to not just learn about it, but really get the swipes, the deploys, the actual resources that you can put into play. All right, good. I see a bunch of you guys typing go, so let's get right into it. So I'm going to give you guys the workbook. This is really the meat and potatoes. And so team, if you could please drop the link to this into the chat for everybody. And I want to caveat, I err on the side of over-delivering on these types of things. And so I just want to make sure you're clear that this is proprietary, but it's for your use in your agency only. Like, this isn't something you can copy and clone and sell to somebody else. Like, this is for your use only. Just give me a yes in the chat if you're okay with that. Like, we give you a very unique opportunity to access this material. Don't abuse it. Okay, great. We're not gonna get into this right now. We're gonna be workshopping through it, but I just want you to see that in this document, there's a checklist, there's step-by-step, there's additional resources with like launch scripts, customizing your welcome box type stuff. There's also an actual snapshot that you'll be able to bring in from high level. It's not overdone. So it's like you've got the framework on how you can bring this into high level and automate it. Some of the landing pages, like the way that you can streamline the process through to the client brief. And then you've got our latest scripting and presentation templates on how we onboard clients through the 3 calls: strategic alignment, technical setup, and like the quick wins activation process. And each one of these has a script, has a facilitator guide, and has the actual template that you can access and get into. Again, super valuable. The welcome sequence. So you're probably not going to be able to just use the exact emails. You're going to want to modify them. So I've given you each of the emails that we send to a new client in that process, as well as a coaching rubric you can use to role play your onboarding process and or train yourself or your team so you can make it world-class on an ongoing basis. So again, I don't want to get into the overwhelming details here, but this workbook is a mother lode of very specific details that you'll be able to swipe and deploy. So just type swipe in the chat if you're excited about having access to this, exactly where it is. Ideally, you've already got 100 times more than what you invested in attending this workshop today. Fantastic. Perfect. Okay, great. You've got the workshop. We're going to be working through this, but I just wanted to make sure you guys know that we've given that to you. So I want to start by spending a little bit of time on the why. And a lot of times, I know onboarding is important. I think we've got it pretty tight. I think we're doing a pretty good job. The client signs up, and then we get this onboard form, and then we do a call with them, and it's pretty good. But the fact is, if you don't have this dialed in, if you don't have it operating at a world-class level, it's costing you $30,000 per client if they last 3 months versus 18 months. And I can tell you, we would lose clients in that 3-month range. Type me if you've ever lost a client in like the 2 to 3 month range and you're like, man, that was a good client. Man, they were like a solid company that we should have been able to do good work for. Don't be embarrassed. I can tell you it's happened to us, right? Too many times, says Bryce. It will cost you. And so that actually amounts to over $90,000 per year if you're losing 3 clients like that any given year, just because you didn't come out of the gates well, you didn't set the proper expectations, you didn't match your sales process to the initial onboarding. And we all know it costs us 15 times more to acquire a new client than it does to retain the client that we have. And so that's why it's mission critical to get access to this. Andrew, should we already have a copy of this doc? It's in the links. So team, if you could drop the link again for them to access that. Agencies at multiple seven figures don't necessarily sell better. They keep better. They retain better. And a big portion of your retention is onboarding and the way you come out of the gates. Really the emotional baseline, if you think about it, somebody signs up. Usually they sign up with you if you're the salesperson in the company, or they sign up with somebody that you consider to be a really great salesperson. And then they get handed off to ideally an account manager, launch coordinator, CSM, whatever you call it in your company. We have launch coordinators, but the mistake I was making, even in the last couple of years, was I trained up these great client success managers, and we gave them this great process focused on extracting usernames, passwords, value proposition, logos, but it was too technical, and it started to feel heavy, emotionally disconnected for the clients. Type technical, and you might be surprised if you think you're doing really well. Go download a recording of your last 3 new client onboardings, and you might be surprised that it starts to lean very heavy technical. Type technical, because this is an important distinction. If they feel confused, overwhelmed, they're going to start to scrutinize. They're going to start to ask a lot of questions. They're going to lack trust in your ability to deliver the promise, your ability to drive the outcomes, especially right now in our world of AI. In our world of AI, there's even more questions coming down the pipe. They're like, well, I don't know, like, are you just dropping this into ChatGPT? And they start to think that it's easy what you're doing. And so you have to make sure that you meet them excited, confident, and clear on how they're going to plug in, how they're going to get the outcomes. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen, Nicole, for your sake. I think for a couple of others that would like to be able to see the slides a little bit clearer. And so here's the reality, and you don't want to admit it. I don't want to admit it, but we spend thousands of dollars on our pitch decks. We think so much about our sales process, about our marketing, and about our onboarding. But then we get the client, and they get a generic form, a generic Zoom link after they sign up, and the gap is jarring. The difference between the way that they were sold and then the experience that they have on the back end. And really, that's what we want to solve for on today's call. We want to develop a world-class onboarding experience that just exceeds expectations and sets proper expectations. And so the model really is, we want to kick off with a bang and appreciation. We want to make the data collection as seamless as possible. And then we got to make sure we're engineering quick wins. We're not just, going to work on the back end and knowing, hey, we got to write the website, we got to create the content, we got a lot of things that we need to do, but it's like week 6 or week 7 before they see any outcomes. That was the mistake we made early. Like as an SEO agency that added paid search, we would be like, hey, we're going to go build the website. It's going to take some time. And we knew we could get them ranked. We knew we were going to get them leads and sales. But by week 6, 7, 10, second month, third month, they are really antsy. And so just type quick. If you'll be conscious, we need to think about how we can engineer quicker wins into the onboarding process. Wait for some comments here. Type quick into the chat for me. All right, Bryson, Charlene, fantastic. Okay, so when you think about your onboarding process right now, the kickoff, like how you're dropping appreciation, the way that you're collecting the data, and the way that you're engineering and kind of coming out of the gates quick for those wins, what's the opportunity? What needs the most work? Give me one of the 3 into the chat. Maybe it's the onboarding form. Maybe it's you're just delay because it's taking a long time to get to the outcomes. I just want you to think about that. Fed says the onboard forms. Kaylin says clients overwhelmed. Brittany says access, trying to get all those usernames, passwords, getting access to the domain. Communication, says Addie. Andrew, seeing value in the first months. Okay, good. So we're thinking, right? We're thinking because awareness precedes change. When we're aware, then we can in fact changes that bring the outcomes that we really want. there's really 3 mission critical quicks, and I believe money loves speed. I believe that the faster you can execute, the faster that you can move things forward, the better. We want to be quick to the first contact after the sale, ideally within 2 hours or less. So right after our salesperson closes the deal, even if he schedules the kickoff call, our launch coordinator is expected within 2 hours to contact that client and say, hey, welcome aboard. Really excited to have you. Here's what's going to happen next. Here, let's make sure we've got these next things happen. We want to be quick to that initial contact, quick to the onboard, which means within 48 hours, we want to have an initial meeting with that client. We're moving things forward. We're making progression. And then within 14 days or less, we need to be quick to the first win. And that doesn't mean, hey, I've got a pretty website or I've got some new content. A win is like actually something tangible, either a lead, an opportunity. Ideally, if you can actually generate some revenue, even a small fraction of revenue, those quicks really set the pace because velocity is the strategy. So I think that retention starts and effective onboarding starts with your sales process. So we want to make sure that after the sale is done, the sales guy is not just off to the next deal. You want to build a process into your agency where they're going back and they're doing a deal summary and giving some emotional context and connecting you with who the decision makers are and passing that insight to the account management team, the launch coordinator team, the people that actually do the work. This was Brad Ferris did a presentation on this at the last intensive, and it was really well received and a really important point. Don't let your salesperson off the hook. Part of their sales process is to pass those details, because if it feels to the client like they obviously you've got a sales process, you extracted kind of revenue goals, targets, what they're doing today, what didn't work in the past, the key services they're focused on. But then it goes to the launch team, and now they're asking those same questions, and they're not referencing those details. It feels like a big disconnect, which is really a very negative outcome for the client. So 5 key principles on this, and then we're going to really drill down. We're going to get into like how to implement this and actually building this out. Number 1 is we want to make sure we welcome with a bang and appreciation. Just type gift if you send some type of gift right out of the gates to a client when they sign up. I know a lot of us do this today. There's great books like Giftology, but it's not too surprising that some agencies don't do anything. It's like, I just signed up with you for $2,500 a month, but all I got was a welcome form. All I got was a kickoff call with somebody on Zoom. And so a couple things that we want to make sure to make that first impression as impactful as possible. Send a welcome gift. We've used gourmet gift baskets in the past. Today we use Sherry's Berries just because in any market, it can arrive basically the same day or the next day. Handwritten notes from the team, those personal touches go an extremely long way. Obviously, speed to the first contact. And this feels obvious, but sometimes it's like, hey, you got an immediate email that goes out welcoming them. They just talk to the salesperson, so that it's probably that you feel like it's already done. But if your account manager or your launch coordinator actually picks up the phone and has a real conversation and leaves a real voicemail, sends a text message, that feels like, wow, there's a real human being on the back end of this that is excited to work with me and is ready to move this relationship forward. And then have some type of welcome sequence in advance. I think a lot of us, we have amazing sequencing in our marketing process. Somebody opts in, somebody schedules an appointment, there's emails and confirmations and all kinds of stuff. We want to do that same kind of thing with like sequencing that communication after they've actually signed up. And so easy thing you can do for about, $65 is send a dozen or 2 dozen Sherry's Berries to the client. If they're in office, they're going to love you, right? Because them and their team are now grabbing the strawberries and eating them. It's just a fun treat. It feels a little healthier than some of the other treats that you can send out. Fed says we do brownie points. Love it. Jason, yep, gourmet gift baskets is a great thing to send. The other thing you can do to have even more elevated in combination with that is some type of customized welcome box. This has an impression just because they're not used to seeing it from a digital marketing agency. And so having a custom box designed that you can put in, a pamphlet that explains what's happening, a copy of your book if you have that, logoed stuff for you. And a giftology will basically tell you want to send gifts that are for them, right? And that's where Sherry's Berries and things come into play. But I found that the clients really do appreciate some swag and it's kind of standing out in their box. Typically this gift, the Sherry's Berries, it's going to get there within 24 to 48 hours. And it's like immediate, oh, wow, they like, look at that. What a classy touch. And then about a week later, they get the welcome box with here's what the plan is. Here's what you can expect. And these are just little things that create that shock and awe that kind of exceed the expectations of what they were already doing. So just type box or gift if this is something you can add to the equation. If you're already doing like Sherry's Berries or something, could you come up with a customized box and really stand out? Awesome. And what's great about the box, a lot of you guys are writing this, is you only have to build it once, right? Build it once, get all the assets in place with the mail house, and then every time you get a new client in your trigger, they grab the stuff in the customized box and they ship it out to the client. And it's just something that automatically happens. In the workbook that I've given you guys, there's a swipe and deploy for that, like the how to design it, where to buy the resources, who we use for the mail house. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but just make sure you're not going to do it yourself. That was the mistake we made, even with an in-office team in Doral. It was like, hey, you know what? Every time we get a client, we'll package the box. And you're not in the business of shipping and fulfillment. You're in the business of digital marketing. So you might as well just get this off the plate. Okay. Step number 2 is we want to make sure we gather the details in a seamless and professional manner. And we know there's so many details that we have to get, right? We've got to get domain access. We've got to get logos. We've got to get pictures of their trucks. We've got to get licenses if we're in home services. Type details. If you feel like, man, there are a lot of details we need to capture when it comes to really, doing what it is we got to do. Yeah, there's tons of little details. And so our mistake in the past was we would send them the form, and we used to be big Keep users, it's all, or Infusionsoft, and we would send them the form, and it was like, we're going to processize this to the place where, they signed up, and they're going to get reminders until they fill in the form. And if they don't fill out the form, they can't have their kickoff call, right? And while that makes sense in theory, that creates a lot of friction for the client. And let's face it, week 2, week 3, week 4, if they haven't submitted, now they're looking at you. They're like, I'm not going to pay you the second bill. You haven't even onboarded me yet. So you want to make sure that you engineer your process, breaking this down a little bit for them and making it as seamless as possible. And so we moved to like this type of format. I'm just going to show you. It's in your documents here, but where they get to a page that's kind of a hub. And actually, I learned this directly from Austin Hauser in our group who did this, and he did it in a really nice way. And when I compared it to what we were doing, I was like, hey, wait a minute, this is going to be a little bit easier for our clients. So we've got a video welcoming them and explaining them, hey, here's what's going to happen. We need you to fill this stuff in, and here's how we're going to interact together. And then give them a hub, and it's easy to set up the scripting like this. That's like, here's what I need for the domain. Here's what I need you to submit, link to the forms, easy logins, and kind of chunk it down where it's not one infinite scroll form, but like the key things that you need in separate forms. That way you can make it a little bit easier. And so I've given you a link to this that you can use as a point of reference. It's also in the high-level snapshot in case you wind up pulling that in and you don't want to use that as a point of reference. All right, so seamless, right? Instead of like one infinite scroll, we want to have multiple steps. We also want to try and feed the data in a way that it doesn't re-ask them for things that are very basic that they would have already given in the sales process. And so you can have the sales team fill in a portion of the form, have that map to custom values on the back end in like high level if you've used that, and click up and have it auto-populate some of the details as they continue down the path. And there's a lot of moving parts to it, but it can be done. And I've given you the framework and a lot of the SOPs on how to do that. But this creates a lot less drag for the client and for your team in kind of pulling all of the data together. Step 3, what we want to do is we want to map out the experience. What does the first week feel like? What does the first 30 days feel like? What does the first 90 days feel like? And so what we moved to, kind of looking at this from the customer's experience, and Jason, we'll get you the link. Somebody on the team, please drop the link for Jason for the workbook. How many of you guys have read the E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber? Just like E-Myth, I mean, ideally, we've all read this. This is one of those foundational business books. McCall has. I know you guys have. I'm just waiting. All right, yes, work on the business, not in the business. And great book. But one of the stories in that book that really resonated with me was the story of this hotel owner. And Michael Gerber went to this hotel, and he said it was just, out of all the hotels he's been to, it had this amazing experience. When he pulled up to the front gate, they welcomed him by name. And then when he got to the lobby, they had his room key ready. They had all the details from the last time that he was at the hotel. And it was just, they somehow had it all set up to his exact preference. And as he was thinking about, like, how did they do that? It was because the owner of that business, the owner of that hotel, was extremely intentional, thinking about, okay, well, when the person gets to the front gate, they can radio down to the front desk. And the front desk can already kind of look them up in the system and know what's going on. And then remember and look up the notes on all of the previous details about how they like the room. But it was an engineered experience. And that's what I want to encourage you to do, is really engineer that experience, engineer those touch points for your clients. And so what we realized as kind of doing this again and again and again was our experience was a little bit rough. It was like they signed up, and then they got this email, and there was a bunch of forms to fill in, and then they got on the call with the account manager, and we thought we had this dialed in. Like, we've been teaching this for quite some time, but it was a long call, and it was very technical heavy. And so we realized that wasn't great for the client. It didn't position our launch coordinator as an expert, as a strategist. It positioned them more just like a technical support person that's just getting details. And so we broke our onboarding into a number of shorter, more tactical, more strategic calls. And so call 1 is strategic alignment. And that's something we want to do within the first 48 hours. They've signed up. We're not going to have everything we need, but we can definitely get on the call and connect, talk about their goals, talk about their current baseline, capture expectations over the first 90 days, really frame the relationship. And so making it a very strategic conversation. And then setting the expectation, like, hey, look, we already sent you the forms. We don't have everything back yet. If you could start to fill those details in, it would be super helpful. And then the second call is the technical onboarding. And that's really where we're making sure we've got the usernames, passwords, all the details, and not relying on the form exclusively, because not everyone has all that information. No, not everyone knows all of those answers. And so training the team or kind of thinking through that call needs to be, let's troubleshoot this. If they don't know how to get in their domain, let's call GoDaddy together. If they don't know like what their backup is for their existing site, let's get on the line with the previous provider and make sure that we're pushing things forward. Bryson, when you have different people on each of these calls, you should be able to, different agencies have different sizes. You should be able to train your launch coordinator, if you have one dedicated person, to handle all 3 of these calls and be like the liaison between the client and the technical team. That way the technical team's focused on doing the technical work. I will say, however, there's agencies in our program that have masterfully done more of a group onboarding process. And so when I say group, they bring in their account manager, they bring in the web dev person, the SEO person, the paid search person, and they say, hey, we're gonna do this as a group, especially that technical onboarding call. And that way the client gets to meet some of those other layers. But I prefer, for consistency, to have a launch coordinator handle that and train them up at that level. And then session 3 would be to do some type of quick wins activation, which is, now let's do something that's going to generate an immediate result. Ideally, strategic alignment, we've got the details about their goals and where they're headed. Technical onboarding, now we've got access to the domain, we've got access to maybe email lists, dispatch systems, and platforms. Quick wins is we can execute. Let's do a review blitz, and I'll talk more about some of these strategies here in a minute. Let's do a database reactivation, but we can do something that takes them from, wow, I just signed up. These guys have had this great onboarding process. I got this gift in the mail, and now I've actually got some leads and some opportunities and some actual wins. Just put a $ in the comments here if that's like, yeah, we need to actually generate some wins within this process. How long does it usually take? As our process would take 3 hours, we lose attention. Yeah, no doubt. Typically it is, if you put all of this together, a minimum of 4 hours to actually do it well. And I love the idea of having one meeting and having it all consolidated, but it's hard to actually be strategic if that's the case. And so that's why you can split this up. And so this would probably be 30 to 45 minutes, a quick connection call. We're talking about where you at, what your goals are. We're making sure we're clear on how we're tracking and the expectations. Technical onboarding is a little bit longer. That's probably going to be like a 90-minute session. Ideally, if they captured some of the details from their onboarding in the strategic call and they've kind of sent that stuff through, then yes, and it's all flowing into a client brief. So you've got all the details. And then this quick wins is probably about an hour to an hour and 30 minutes. Who does your strategic alignment call? The AM? Yes. It would, in our case, we have a launch coordinator that handles all of the new clients in their first 90 days. But if you have account managers that do launches and client management, ideally that would be your launch coordinator, your account manager that handles it. Our clients are very busy. Hard to get the single decision maker, never mind 3. Let's see, I'm just reading this question. How do you handle that? Chris, that's super important in the sales process that the client understands there's work to do, there's collaboration that needs to be done, and so we're going to need you to show up. You or whoever can give us the details and make the decisions, and just you have to make that part of the process. Nicole, how do you space these out within a week? I would say this one within the first 72 hours, or like no more than 2 business days. They just signed up. We had a call with them. We already probably booked it right on the sales call, but right away we want to get that first call in. And then this one's usually going to be like 3 to 5 days later because they need to gather usernames, passwords. If the client has availability and they want to move quicker, by all means. And then usually this one we're going to do by like week 2 or 3. So hopefully that makes sense. LeJohn Jackson says, so you have a separate person for onboarding, correct? Yeah, so once everything is done and launched for us, it gets handed off to their account manager. There's a conversation and they transition to that person that's going to be pulsing with the client. I think once you get to, I don't know, like more than 6 clients per month and you have account managers that are over 15 or 20 clients each, it starts to make sense to have one person that can just own the launch process. That's a great question. All right. We also want to make sure that we've got some type of visual roadmap because there's a lot of moving parts in these relationships. A lot of, like he said, she said, a lot of, well, I thought I was going to start getting leads or I was going to start ranking day 1 and so having a visual explanation of like, okay, here's what this journey is going to look like and laying the foundation. Here's what's going to happen weeks 1 through 7. Here's what's going to happen within the first month. Here's what's going to happen month 1 to month 3. And just kind of sprinting that out, explaining it in a way that's very easy to understand. In the templates that I gave you, like the strategic alignment call, this is kind of how we explain it. Month 1 is foundation, right? We're going to be getting tracking set up and launching some of the ads and doing database reactivation. Month 2 is where we're going to start to see a little bit of progress and campaign optimization flow. And then month 3 is really where we're going to start to see compounding results. And then kind of like, here's what's normal. Don't be surprised that you're going to see some fluctuation, that there's going to be ad cycle shifts. And what we don't want to do is judge results, panic during market fluctuations, and be changing the strategy. And so you want to set this in that strategic onboarding, like here's the roadmap where we're headed, and here's some of the things that are going to come up so that they don't wind up coming at you unexpectedly. And then give them a lot of clarity. Like if they feel super clear, all right, I signed up, here's what they said they were going to do. I've had these calls, I've had these conversations, here's the deadlines that they're working for. They believe and get fully bought in to your system, and they're looking at you and your company as the leader versus if you don't do this, a lot of times you wind up becoming like they look at you as a marketing assistant. They're saying, hey, I want you to do this on my website, or I want you to change that, or I want you to do this, and you're no longer leading the process. Just type leading if that makes sense. We want to make sure we're leading the charge. Us and our account management team. We're going to really train that into the account management team along the way. Awesome. And so there's a script and a presenter's guide for this for you guys in this workbook. We're going to get into some of this as we go, but so the strategic onboarding, there's a template. Obviously, it's branded for plumbing and HVAC SEO, but you'll be able to modify that and model against it. And then you've got some of the scripting that we use to train our team on how to drive through those 3 calls and really keep them on the rails. Type helpful if you feel like that's going to be helpful. And not that you're probably going to swipe and deploy it directly, but just it's all so helpful to benchmark proven approaches and proven thought processes. Fantastic. Okay. Number 4 is we want to make sure that we engineer quick wins. And this is one of the most important things that will dictate whether the client's happy and like giving you a complete carte blanche, or whether they start to question you. And so there's a million things you could do. Be creative, because I think it's going to be different from vertical to vertical. But for us, the 3 plays that we find work really, really well to generate some immediate outcomes and immediate wins. Number 1 is a review blitz. And that's just getting their past customers that they haven't asked for a review from. And if you're using high level and you get through A2P, by the time that session happens, email blast, text message blast, thanks for your business, would love it if you share us a review, straight to there. And you can literally show them go from 190 reviews to 210 within a couple of hours, a couple of days. So that works really well. Yeah, Karen says A2P can be a little bit of a challenge. Chris, sometimes they don't have databases and it becomes really difficult. Yeah, you're gonna, in the strategic alignment call, you're gonna be asking like, what's the dispatch or what's the system that you use today to house your prospect data? And ask like, do they have it in QuickBooks maybe? Do they have it in a dispatch or a client management system? And that really works well. Aaron, do you offer an incentive to leave a review? It depends. We don't. There's some regulations against it, but I know a lot of agencies that do. And so I think 100 would be very aggressive. But if you're talking super high ticket, which is different than transactional, then maybe that makes sense to do that type of incentive. Do you ask the client for their list and then email on their behalf? Typically, we're working to get it set up on a sub. So we set our clients up inside a sub account in high level, and then we're sending it through their subdomain and like through their email account. Review blitz works really well. The other is a database reactivation. If you're dealing with more established companies, you'd be surprised how many prospects, how many unconverted opportunities, how many past clients they have just sitting there that they have never emailed, they've never reached out to, they've never made an offer to. And so coming up with a reason to get back inside the house or to get them back into the shop or to get them back doing something together works well. And there's a whole thought process around database reactivation, but using high level, you can do this pretty easy for clients. It used to be easier to do text offers as well, but again with A2P, you gotta jump through some hoops. And then the other would be like if you're doing paid ads, local service ads, LSA, meta ads, get a version of the campaign launched within the first 2 weeks. And for a lot of us, the stuck point would have been setting up the website or setting up the landing pages. We moved to just getting access to their domain, setting up a very simple landing page on their subdomain, and starting to bid on some terms so we can start to generate not just, hey, look, we're doing work, we're doing stuff behind the scenes, but they're starting to get some deal flow. So just type wins. Yeah, LSA is clutch. Yeah, if they don't have it set up correctly or they haven't even gotten approved, there's lots of opportunities. But type wins if there's at least one win idea that you're like, hey, I can move that a little earlier into the process. And I know that intuitively, we know if we can get them wins and choreograph an amazing experience, we bought the first year. Like without question, we came out of the gates well. We're going to execute on what we promised, but now we've also gotten them some wins and gotten some momentum, because momentum is mission critical. All right. Number 5 is we want to make sure we're communicating every step of the way. And some of us do this well, some of us don't. Most of us do a lot. Our teams do a lot. We set up this project management task list with all of the things that have to be done. Claiming the Google Map listing, optimizing the profile, setting up the design comp, building links, posting content, setting up tracking mechanisms. but we have that in our internal system, and the client doesn't see it. And if they're not seeing it and they're not hearing from you, what do they feel? Just let me know, like, what comes to mind. You're hustling. You're doing a million micro tasks for them behind the scenes, but what are they feeling? Ghosted, left in the dark, neglected. Yeah, and that's exactly what we don't want, right? And so no reason we can't manually communicate at least a couple times a week in the early days to say, hey, here's what we're working on, here's what's going on, here's what's up. But we can also set up some automations as we close tasks in ClickUp and other things that trigger some messages just to say, hey, guess what? Great news, this just got done. And so going back to like engineering that first 90 days is we can really think about the communication cadence and how many touch points are they going to have and how's that going to look and feel to the client. And so I've given this to you guys in the workbook to kind of think through, but welcome gift and welcome sequence, automatic. Personal call or message from the account manager, launch coordinator, should happen within the first 72 hours. I like to have it happen the same day. That's personal, that's manual. Kickoff call, that's manual. Kickoff calls 2 and 3, the technical quick wins. First progress update, sharing some wins and some data, and then the monthly recap. We can really touch them in a lot of different ways if we're intentional with how we think that through. The other thing you can do that is interesting, again, thinking about gifting and knowing how much an unexpected gift goes, and we don't think about it, but we don't get very many gifts, and we don't get many things in the mail. And so, yes, send the welcome box. Yes, send them some goodies when they first signed up, but also think about milestones that could be interesting. This was another one that I think it was Luke Egerbraten shared, and I was like, yes, I like mapping this out and give your account management team a little bit of a carte blanche budget to invest in this type of stuff. But you could send something like balloons the day the website launches, if that's something you still do. And there's like a culmination, hey, website's live, this is really exciting. Send something in the mail for that. On their first lead, you could have something that you send out. But you can really get creative with how you milestone these gifts and systematize it so it doesn't get forgotten. There's a million different tools you could use for all of these different things. I'll tell you, we use High Level as the main communication hub and sub-account for our clients, dedicated phone number as a number inside High Level for each of the account managers, dedicated email for the account management team. We use Slack internally. We don't give our clients access to us on Slack. Project management is in ClickUp. The roadmap is designed in Canva and then presented on Google Slides, just easy to edit, easy to modify, easy to update. Cloud storage, we take all of our clients' logos and images and we put it on Box. I wish it was on Google. It's a little bit, any of those platforms really work well, but we use Box for that. Using feedback loops through High Level, checking in, how are we doing? How would you rate your experience so far? And then of course, tracking all of the results. And that's a conversation for another workshop. But I want you to now, kind of having thought through that, I'm going to give you a quick 2 minutes and just self-evaluate. Pretend like you're taking yourself through your experience as a new client. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What are the touch points? And you can either put that on a scratch pad or you can do it on the actual workbook. Steven says, too manual. Yeah, maybe like every last call, every last communication, every last detail is a little too manual potentially. Aaron says, missing lots of opportunities to build certainty. Nicole, can you explain the difference between the program and the mastermind? Are you talking about the seven-figure agency? If so, I'll spend a couple minutes on that. Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you some details on that at the end. Karen, slow feedback loop. Awesome. All right, let's get to work on this. We've kind of looked at a big picture, like here's what we want to think about, here's the 5 keys, here's the things we want to pay attention to. Let's work on this. So what I want you guys to do, if you haven't already, I want you to go to sevenfigureagency.com/onboarding-workbook. That's going to open up the workbook itself. Where does client communication happen for you, Chris? So for us, it happens through High Level, predominantly through SMS and email. So a combination of those two, and then live meetings happen on Zoom. Amrak says, automating as much as we can. Absolutely. Okay. So what I want you to do is open up this document, and we're just going to kind of scroll through this. We're going to work through this together. There's a checklist, and I kind of quickly hit all of the different things. Sarah, you never meet in person. All our clients are scattered across the country, and so we predominantly do it on Zoom. There's occasions where we meet with a client if we're at an event, or if we happen to be in their area, we'll maybe pop in and do some videos, but for the most part, it happens through Zoom. Kieran says, what are you doing to overcome A2P verification? Can someone drop the link to, Jeremy, I think it was A2P Wizards. They're like, there's a service that almost all of the members are using that it has helped us streamline that process. Basically, you pay them and they handle it for you. Obviously, every client has to have A2P verification. Yeah, A2P Wizards. It's not an affiliate link or anything, but I mean, our top agencies, they're swearing by just doing that, and it's much easier. Yeah, that looks right, Jeremy. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to audit yourself. So obviously, I see you guys have this open. Go File, make a copy so you have your own version, and then I'm going to give you guys like 4 minutes. Go through these check boxes and identify the missing components. And don't feel like you can do all of it at once, because some of this stuff is easy, some of it's hard. Try and find like the next big thing that you can execute, that you can put in place. Let me find the timer here. And we're auditing ourselves on this. Now, launch call scheduled on time. Yes. Thank you, email. Yes. Jerry's Bears. No, I'm not doing that today. I need to add that. Welcome box. No, I don't have a welcome box, for instance. Data capture, onboard form. Yeah. Maybe like, you know what? I'm doing the data form, but I need to break it down a little bit, make it a little bit easier. Communicate every step of the way. That's an opportunity. Structured agenda, resetting timeframes. So just kind of go through this. It should trigger some clarity on what needs to be done. Josh, great question. I'm going to show you that here in a second. And while you guys are working through this, I'm going to answer the questions. Ashley, does the salesperson and AM meet after the sale to coordinate the overlap of the information in the sales so that it isn't redundant? I hate personally when I have to re-explain everything. Ashley, yes, 100%. You don't want it to feel like they're re-explaining after the sales process. In the perfect world, have a sales huddle where sales call is done, launch coordinator, maybe even ops director, jump on a call, and like, hey, we got the client, DocuSign is in or signed agreement is in, here's what they were expecting, here's what they need. Or you could have a structured post-sale process, and this is what we actually do. Salesperson has a form that they fill in. It's the post-sale form, and that gives the details that then push to set up the client folder and to launch the kickoff process. Ideally, a Zoom meeting or a huddle makes a lot of sense and works really well. A lot of the agencies in the program do that, and I would encourage it if you don't already have it processed another way. Do you have a PM? Ours handles billing and AM follow-up if needed. We do have a project manager that is more on the operational side of things, moving things forward. This is awesome for a team, but how would you adjust if it's you, Tim? You don't need a kickoff, right? Just make sure you're capturing the notes and like, okay, here's all the details the client just said, and then you're handling the kickoff call with the client. And you can use a lot of the scripting and the process to create that world-class flow. Is there a snapshot? Yes. So let's get into it. We've looked at this. What I want you guys to do is, in the comment down here, what's the one or two missing things that you're like, I know I'm going to do this. I know I'm going to action this one or two things. Put that into the comments for me. Gifts, don't do it. I like the project timeline, love it, that's great. Guys, this is a workshop, so this is where I need you guys to show me that we're working together and you guys are getting some things. Offer PPC with SEO. Start communicating every step of the way, says A, I love that. Gifts and streamlining the communication, very good. sending gifts within 24 hours, better onboarding forms. Fantastic. Okay, good. You guys are working. I appreciate the engagement. All right, scrolling down, kind of like I've given you some additional resources here. When I say the onboard call process and sequence, this is the messaging that we have in place that you can use as a point of reference. And the easiest way to modify this to your situation is give it to your favorite chat platform, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or Manus or something else, and say, hey, I want to update this for my onboarding process. We work with this niche. That will give you a great sequence that you can leverage and modify. When it comes to the welcome box, this is like literally how we build our welcome box. And so there's a long paragraph here, which is probably a little bit confusing, but we have the box itself designed by Packlane, and there's a little online WYSIWYG editor. There's a couple of templates here inside Canva, which all of us use Canva these days for like the components of the box itself that you can modify. And then you're gonna buy whatever, like think about how many clients you get per month. If it's 5 or 3 or 1, you're probably gonna get 25 to 50 boxes and send them to your mail house. And then you're gonna get a box like this, and it's kind of a cool little box, however you wanna put it. Buy the contents, and so there's a Google Sheet here with the stuff we buy, where we buy it. None of this is affiliated. I could care less whether you use these tools. We're just trying to make it easy for you to get this done. So it's like, okay, I'm going to buy, this custom mailer. I'm going to put this Padfolio in there, this stress ball. And you just buy, 50 to 100 of these, depending upon how far in advance you want to get it. And you're going to ship all that stuff down to your mail house. The mail house we use is City Blueprint. City Blueprint is in Wichita, Kansas. I met them through Dan Kennedy. They used to mail all of his boxes and things. We've got a little template here. If you don't have a onboard journey that you can explain, you've got that as a point of reference. The instructions to send to your mail house. So once they've got all the stuff and you've already kind of worked out, hey, look, you're going to hold this stuff for me. You're going to grab it and ship it on demand. There's some basic instructions here, right? And I think City Blue must be referenced in here. Can we use the links for the welcome resource you use? You just modify them. Modify them for your particular purposes. All right. Is that helpful, the onboard box stuff? Is it okay if I pimp it myself? I can go through. Absolutely. Yeah, take the idea. It doesn't need to be done through our mail house. I'm just showing you an option. And then when you've got your onboarding in place, that is just an internal trigger that client is one, message goes out to the mail house to grab the stuff off the shelf and ship it out to the client. It just happens like clockwork. Okay, so that's that part. The next is the onboard automation, and a lot of people do different things. Like if you're using HubSpot or using some other platform, the concepts will still apply. If you're using high level, there's a snapshot. It's not over-engineered. Like it's literally just very basic. Here's how your landing page could look. Here's how your onboard sequence could flow. And there's some step-by-step instructions here. But the main thing would be a page like this. And this could be, on high level, or it could be built somewhere else. And this is where we're welcoming them to the relationship, and we're asking them to do the things that need to be done, get us access to their domain, submit their forms, who their onboarding coordinator is. I would request that you not fill this in because this is actually a live site, a page where they can schedule their kickoff call. This comes into play so usually our sales process is talk to the salesperson, sounds great, get the credit card, and then we schedule the kickoff call, and it gets keyed right in. But sometimes they're reviewing the document after the fact, and they send in a credit card authorization form, and then the sales team is pushing it through. And then in that case, we need to say, hey, next step is let's go ahead and schedule your kickoff call. And so you want to have a place where they can self-select that in addition to calling. Becky says, I love the idea of the onboarding landing page. I mean, actually, I got that idea from Austin Hauser from Base Code Marketing, one of our coaches and mentors in the program. And so we all learn from each other on this stuff. And then ideally, you've got some kind of content brief. And I gave you a version of ours that you're going to have web forms that they fill in. You're going to have conversations that are happening over the phone. And then you need a place where all the content lives for that client. So we've got all of their details, where they're at in terms of revenue, what the goal is from that call, and then some of the more technical stuff like what did the sales team know about the client? What did we cover on the strategic alignment call? Like the more tactical things that we absolutely have to have. And what's cool is if you're using Google Docs or you're using ClickUp, you can do like a very similar client brief like this. That way everybody on the team, from the launch coordinator to the growth manager that takes over down the track, has everything that they need. The presentation, yeah, I'll make sure you guys have access. A couple of you asked about the presentation loop. Presentation. How do you handle slow feedback loop for initial approvals, video production and social? Can you store this info in a high level? Becky, yes, you can. So ideally, your onboard form pushes to high level and ClickUp, but you still want to have a free form editable like document like this, more like for this type of stuff. That's easier to interact with. Trying to have it just all live in one place it becomes cumbersome for everybody working with it. That's a great question though. And then we do have some additional resources. How do we access the client brief? So if you come down here inside the onboarding automation at the bottom, we've got a link to the client brief that you can use as a point of reference. You can clone it. And then you've got the emails that could go along with that. We didn't fill in all the emails because they're going to have to be modified anyways. And so you're going to need to kind of flesh out your sequence and then put it into the onboarding. Hey, welcome aboard. I'm not going to read this email; it would bore you to tears. But you get the idea. Type yes if you can use this stuff. If you're like, this is going to magnify the speed at which you can execute some of these ideas. Fantastic. Okay, good. I like heck yes. This is awesome. Fantastic. Okay, good. Fantastic. All right. So then when it comes to the onboarding calls, right? We talked about 3 different calls. We talked about the strategic alignment call, the technical setup call, and then the quick wins activation call. I kind of broke down why we don't want just one call. But down here, you've got me, like an actual recording of me role-playing what that strategic alignment call sounds like. And then there's a facilitator's guide with how you work your way through it. Whether you're doing this, Tim, or whether you've got an account management team, this is great for training. Because what I found was I was doing the onboarding calls really well. I had it dialed in. I felt confident. The clients were super happy and excited. And then I handed off to the account management team. I was like, well, they know what to do. They're going to do it. And the reality is, if you don't have them role play this, you don't have them practice it back to you, you don't check in and like listen to the recordings every once in a while, the experience drops significantly. So if you're going to hand this off to a team, which you absolutely should as you scale, just type role play in the chat if you'll role play this with the team, and you'll inspect what you expect. Yeah. Awesome. So we're going to role play that. The technical wins, quick wins, is kind of a little bit of a framework on this. Inspect what you expect. Copy of the welcome sequence again. The other thing that's kind of interesting, I'll kind of show you. I created a clone of this because this is the one we used to train our team. But I wanted to be able to give them the feedback without having to listen to all the calls all of the time. And so we set up an AI call review process where at least once per month, they need to take the transcript and get coached and feedback on how they performed. And so realizing that that's useful, but also not something I can just hand you right out of the gates, I gave you the coaching prompt. So if you were to go to Claude Code or you were to go to Manus and say, hey, I want to create a grading system to grade my account managers on the launch process, here's the prompt you can give it, and then the scoring rubric that you can provide. It's pretty crazy. It takes their transcript and says, here's what you did well, here's what you missed. If I had to rate you on a scale from 1 to 10, you received a 7, and it just streamlines that process. You should still listen to yourself a couple times per month, but this is a little bit more advanced. Like if you haven't done any of this stuff yet, you don't have a team, like this is not useful, don't even spend any time on this. But if some of you guys are at 7 figures, multiple 7 figures, I think this is going to be super useful. Type of rubric if you'll use that one. And I don't want you to waste a lot of time on it if you're too early in the phase, but if you are, like Megan, definitely leverage it. And you could coach yourself too, because there's a gold standard of what you want to do. And some days you're on, some days you're off, but that feedback is super useful. Russell is going to use it. Okay, great. Kind of scrolling down from there, obviously once they're onboarded, we've got to make sure we don't miss anything. Tony Ricketts from Online Marketing has done a lot of training in the 7-figure agency community. He runs a great agency in the lawn care space, and he gave a wonderful comprehensive checklist that they use. Obviously, it lives inside their project management system, and so I thought that would be useful to share here as well. This will not be a project management session. We actually, for 7-figure agency, have a lot of training by Aiden Silvers that culminates what we do and what a lot of the other agencies do. And he created a master ClickUp project management template that you can leverage to streamline what happens once they're signed up and you've created that amazing workshop. Do we have workshops for the PMs? The training that Aiden did is kind of at that PM level where it's like I don't get into that level of the weeds, but Aiden does. And so you could use it as the owner, or you could give it to your project management team, and they'll be able to take a lot of those best practices. Because having a checklist is one thing. Having system dependency, it's like once this is done, now all of these tasks get assigned, and there's due dates for all of them. It's kind of a level up, and that's what Aiden can show you in that particular training. How do you decide what client goes to what AM? The onboarding think about who to assign. Nicole, it's a great question. I think it depends upon how many account managers you have. Some of us, we've got 6 or 7 account managers, so we can be a little bit more strategic with, this personality type matches this person. But if for some of us, if you don't have it, it's irrelevant. We usually are doing it based on capacity more than anything else. Like once all the account managers have 20 to 25 accounts in that range, they're kind of at their cap with the way our agency runs. And so that's when we got to go train somebody else. But assuming there's a little capacity, we will think, okay, well, this person would mesh better with Casper than Kayla, for instance. So hopefully that helps. Megan, as part of the 7-figure agency, we've got a whole section on world-class onboarding. I apologize, you may be a member. If so, I'll make sure you get the link. If you're not a member, we'd love to have you come in and participate. All right, so that's your onboarding process. I tried to make this as checklist, step-by-step, swipe and deploy as possible. I've also provided kind of your client retention fundamentals on outside of just onboarding. We've got to have effective communication. We've got to have success management. And so, there's a whole checklist on where were some opportunities to improve in the account management process, and then a full flow chart for those of you that are more visually oriented, kind of how these phases interact and intermingle. Any questions? I know there's been a lot of great questions throughout, so if you've got questions on this, please let me know. Megan says, super helpful, a lot to think about. Fantastic. I love that. Josh, can we have the presentation early? Here, let me before I forget here, I'm just going to give you guys, there you go. There's your presentation. Get back to my board. Am I big for you guys? Are you guys able to see me now? Jason says, worth every penny spent. Amazing. I'm glad to hear that. Makes our lives easier. Can you use this? Will you use this? I think that's what I want to know. Tim says, useful stuff as ever. Give me a yes if you'll use this. Yep, says Jason. Ashley says yes. Okay, good. So great marketing gets them in the door. World-class onboarding is what keeps them. And so now you've leveled up, or you have the capacity to level up. I think a lot of times there's a difference between having the resource, having the asset, and having it in play. And so I just want you to think, like, what might prevent you from actually getting this into the real world? Like, because if it was easy as just, swipes and deploys, we'd all be running multiple seven-figure agencies. We'd all, have ribbed apps, right? Time, says Justin. Accountability, says another. Additional questions and answers, and kind of getting that additional feedback is kind of what I hear often. Even just on this component in world-class onboarding, which you now have every step, every piece of the puzzle, it comes down to action. Is exactly right, Jason, right? But there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of effort that needs to go into it. And so that's just world-class onboarding. We know to build a multiple seven-figure agency, we've got to land clients, and there's all kinds of process around that. We've got to deliver results, and there's all kinds of process with the ClickUp systems and everything that go into that. And then we've got to retain the client, which also includes the communication rhythm and what the monthly review call looks like, and hiring and training account managers, and getting all of that into place. And that's what we're focused on here at Seven Figure Agency, is looking at that big picture, helping you fill in those gaps, helping you guys level all of those components of the business up to a world-class level. If you're members, you can feel free to hop off, because the core component of what I'm training on today is complete.